Hello, my name is AJ Goldsby. I'm a life master from Pensacola, Florida, and I wanted to bring you game 11 of the World Championship match. I've had just a day or so here to analyze this. It was played on the 23rd, and today's the 25th. And I wanted to analyze this and go through it a few times, see if I couldn't figure out exactly what happened. I don't like to do anything instantly simply because I think it leads to shoddy analysis. But I've had 2 days to analyze this. I think I can pretty much tell you what happened, and I'm going to try to keep this video fairly brief. Again, this is game 11. It was the decisive 11 of the World Championship match that's being played in Sochi, Russia in 2014. In this final game, Magnus Carlsen was white and Viswanathan Anand was black. This was the last game because after a decisive result, Carlsen was guaranteed to retain his world championship, so there was no point in playing game 12. Anyway, go ahead and look at the opening. It starts off as a Spanish game of Lopez, e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, 3, bishop b5, knight f6. Of course, this is the Berlin defense. We've already seen this before in the match, and it was featured in the World Championship match. The first time that I remember seeing this featured at the World Championship level was in the Kasparov Kramnik match of 2000, and in that match, one of the greatest players who ever lived, Garry Kasparov, or Kasparov more correctly, was unable to break through Kramnik's defense. So we see, and then we've already seen this one very long game. It was drawn in like 100+ moves earlier in the match. I forget exactly which game that was. But anyway, white castles, knight takes e4, d4, knight d6, bishop takes c6, d takes c6, d takes e5, knight f5, queen takes d8 check, king takes d8. This is the main line, and involves an exchange of queens, which I really don't care for. And it's very difficult for white side to make any progress. Some of the best grandmasters in the world have tried to play the white side of this position, and I think they've been uniformly unsuccessful. And so I think that's why that black plays this so often, is very oftentimes the better player can play this and simply win and eventually grind out a victory. And also, too, I think that, the complications, it's great for the players that feature in-game knowledge. And it's also a very complex queenless kind of middle game. But anyway, h3, bishop d7, knight c3, h6, b3, king c8, bishop b2, c5. This is a slight deviation. Earlier, actually, I believe it was the London Classic 2010, Anand Nakamura featured b6, rad1, knight e7, rfe1, c5, and it was eventually drawn. It was a very long game, as I remember. I looked it up a couple days ago, and it was like 60 or 70 moves. But anyway, that was Anand Nakamura from the London Classic in 2010. Going back to our game, white played 11b3, king c8, bishop b2. Here, Anand plays c5. Sooner or later, black wants to try to get some space on the queen side. rad1, b6, rfe1. This was played after a 10-minute think. Either Carlsen's not totally familiar with the position, or he's just trying to figure out how to place his pieces. Another game that was played just earlier this year was knight d5, a5, knight d2, knight e7, knight e3, and the game was Kokorov-Liko from the Russian Championship just earlier this year, 2014, and that game was drawn very quickly in around 20 moves. Anyway, here Carlsen, again, going back 13 rad1, b6, Carlsen plays rfe1. And, now it's just a game. Both players are looking to put their pieces on the very best squares. Bishop e6, knight d5, g5. This is a rather interesting move. It weakens f6, and, white can now stick a knight in on f6. But black gets some counterplay against the white king, possibly. So it's a very interesting move. c4, king b7. Again, well, let's go back here and talk about that just a little bit more. G5 here, 15 G5. It is an interesting move, but some players criticized it and said it was bad. Some players said it was a good idea. The bottom line is it's just an interesting approach. As far as the engines are concerned, the position is dead level, so I needed to say that there. But basically, the main drawback for black is that white can stick a knight into f6. c4, king b7, king h2, a5, a4. White plays a4 here because he just wants to clamp down completely on the counterplay over here on the queen side. He can't allow black to break free and get a lot of play over there. That's one thing that I've just learned from experience playing this line on the internet, is that if black breaks free and he gets a lot of free play, or he gets a place where he gets the initiative, then it can be very bad for white. And also, too, remember that black has the bishop pair, so sometimes I've seen some players trade a lot of pieces and pawns and rip the position wide open, but that generally favors the side with the bishop pair, which here is black. So I think Carlsen's approach, White's approach here, is completely correct, is to keep the position closed. Knight e7, g4, knight g6. Anand's played a pretty good Berlin so far. He's got a fairly solid position. There's no way he's lost. I'm running Deep Fritz 14 in the background, and I've already gone through this very carefully with Houdini 3, and I can tell you that thus far it's dead equal. King g3, bishop e7, knight d2, rh d8, knight e4, bishop f8, and now knight ef6. And here Anand plays just a brilliant move. It was just an incredible move. And the video is kind of funny because Carlsen looked absolutely stunned when Anand played this. Anand played here 23 b5 double exclam. And I won't get into the analysis. I think some annotators online have already looked at this move. They've done a very good job of Danny King and several others have already looked at this move and shown you some of the possibilities that can happen. Basically, my initial instinct was to play a takes b5, but black plays a4. In some lines, he can sack the exchange, and he just basically penetrates over here from the side with the white king being wide open and open from the side up here. It's just a bad idea. That's a very general description, but I don't want to spend a lot of time on there. Like I said, other players and other grandmasters have already looked at this position, and if you look online, you can find some of their annotations and some of their videos. But anyway, b5. White just plays a very careful move. Bishop c3, just ignore the pawn. B takes. I think it's even worse there for black to play b4. b4 is just going to turn this guy into a totally bad bishop. So b takes a4, b takes a4. And right now, again, the engines are still showing this position to be completely dead level. Also, too, when I post this video on the internet, I'll make sure I give a link here and show you the ChessBase annotations has a fairly good annotation of this game. And I really didn't find anything new over their annotation, really not much. King c6, king f3. Now here black played rdb8. Okay, that was not a good move. Much better was, found this again with the engines Houdini and Fritz, just simply bishop e7, knight e3, bishop takes f6, e takes f6, rdb8 exclam, and there black is much better. Or not much better, but about 25/100ths of a pawn better. And again, the idea is once more being the white's king open from the side, and if black's pieces penetrate in. And that also, black has a very interesting idea. Another thing I wanted to point out, I found one line, I won't repeat it here because it would take a lot of time to recreate it, and I just don't want to spend the time here to do it. But it was one interesting line I found with the engines the first game this day was played. And one line black can play are rook at b8 to b4, white takes, black takes. Black takes this pawn. Eventually this pawn falls too. This knight comes to f4. And eventually, in the line I looked at, black wound up with two connected passers just running down the board. It was just an amazing idea, and I think all these things are a direct follow-up of Anand's brilliant idea of b5. That was just a tremendously interesting move. But here in the actual game, Anand played rdb8, and that was slightly inferior. It wasn't terrible. Again, the engines are still showing this position to be dead level. King e3, and here black plays rook b4. I think this was just a bad idea. It's just, not that great. White gets the better game simply by taking with the bishop. Bishop takes b4, c takes b4. I was a little bit curious as why maybe he didn't take a takes b4 and then the rook immediately can attack this pawn. I guess white could just defend it, but it just seemed like that might have been the better way to go. And the ChessBase annotator agreed with that a takes b4 was the better move. And knight h5, and now, excuse me, now white's just much better. He's better, and he just starts exchanging pieces at every opportunity. So king b7, f4, g takes f4, knight takes f4. Now black exchanges. He probably needed to play something like c6 here, but he continues to exchange, and every exchange just makes white better. Knight takes f4, bishop takes, rook d7. The rooks penetrate in. Knight d5. Rook c6 and rook takes f7. I think here is pretty much a beginning of an end. If this hadn't been a world championship or so much important, and obviously mistakes can be made Anand really could have resigned right here, but they do play it out. Bishop c5, rook takes c7, check exclam, knight takes, rook takes. If king takes, knight, just simply rook c1 and white regains. There's two pieces there on the file. One piece moves, the other piece is lost. It's a fairly simple idea, and so king c6. And now just knight b5 exclam. And here again, Anand, you know, he could resign. He plays a few more moves and then quits. Bishop takes b5, a takes b5, king takes b5, e6, b3. King d3, I give that move an exclam. Maybe it's not the absolute best move. King d5 was playable, also h4 was playable. But the idea is that the king comes back and stops those pawns. And once the king stops the pawns, then it's pretty much over. Bishop e7, h4, g5. G5 here, h takes g5, h takes g5, 44, a3, king c3 exclam. And here the pawns are getting stopped. If b2, simply king b3, king a2, and the pawns are stopped cold, white wins because of his passers on the king side over here. If bishop takes pawn, just e7, and black has to sack his bishop to stop the queen. And if the king's stopping these guys, then there's no point in playing on. Again, b2, just king b3, king a2, and then shove the pawn in. And either the rook will come over here and attack, you know, the rook can come here and attack, you know, once the king gets to a2, it's all over. Rook comes here and rook comes here, and then pawn goes up, and the bishop has to give up its life for the pawn. It's pretty much a loss. Or if king a4, then simply rook a4 check. And here Anand resigned. That pretty much did it for the match. That concluded the match. Carlsen retains his world championship by 2 points. It was a real interesting match. It was not real well played. I think nerves, and both players also showed clear signs of fatigue there in the middle of the match. I mean, players were not finding the best tactical strokes. I think the tension and the stress are just way too much. It's impossible for either player to really play their very best chess, you know, under that kind of tension. And also, I think both players may have been guilty of over preparing. You know, they look, you know, I've done that before tournaments, and sometimes if you spend too much time preparing, you actually arrive at the playing hall with no energy left to play the game. And I've been guilty of that. So those are certainly some of the mistakes the players made. Maybe they can fix those things the next time around. Carlsen's a young, you know, dynamo of a player, very talented. I figured he would retain his world championship match. He's just younger and stronger, and he did. And, you know, that most of the experts agreed with that Carlsen should win. Although a lot of people, I was kind of rooting for Anand too, though, because I am a big Anand fan. He's a great player. He will be back. He's not done, not by a long shot. He'll win many more tournaments and many more games. But Carlsen is just, you know, the man right now, and he's the guy to beat, and guys that might challenge him sometime in the future might be the younger players like Caruana or Nakamura, or those kind of players. I don't see Anand getting back to the World Championship match again, but again, you never know. I wouldn't have predicted it before the last candidates matches either. Well, that pretty much does it for my video. I didn't want to run too long for this video. Thank you for watching my videos. If you like my videos and like my web pages and you want to support that effort, please go to the PayPal website. That's www.paypal.com, and make a donation there under my email address, which is LifeMasterAJ@yahoo.com. Thank you for watching my video, and have a great day.